and have done this for quite a long time. Karen's got a really impressive biography. If you look at our website, they've been awarded a Legal 500 firm for its work in particularly this area, in alternative family building work. So they're the perfect people to help talk about this area for us, whether it's from starting a journey through to the final legal elements in terms of getting parentage and so forth. So thank you, Karen, for joining us. It's really good of you. I think we can hear your audio, can we?
Hear me?
Yep, that's great. That's great. Yeah, so Karen's going to talk us through some of the legal issues, particularly for UK parents. This presentation now is relevant particularly for our UK people. Last week, some of you would have heard from an Irish lawyer in another webinar. This one is particularly with concerns people might have if you're a UK citizen. Some of you I know might be in a relationship with one of you's UK national and one of you's not. And Karen might be able to touch on that issue for us as well.
Okay, I'll just share my screen. I hope you can see.
That's great. Yep.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry, forgive me. Let me just get this up. Good evening. I've been listening in the wings. There's quite a lot of information to digest. So obviously, if you do have trouble keeping up with all of this, please do feel free to give us a call, chat, or email us later. I also have one of my surrogacy lawyers in the chat room trying to keep up with any questions that you may present. So it doesn't really matter what country you go to for surrogacy, in that the UK will still have its own requirements when you come back. So what you have to look very much is what the country's requirements are first and foremost to suit your needs. But then when you do come back into the UK, what synergies or actually sometimes non-synergy and legal points do you have to actually counter? So what we do is we'll meet with you very early on. So we will not do the local legal work. We won't help you necessarily find a surrogate, but what we can do is introduce you to people, work with people, guide you through the whole process very early on. We can talk about your jurisdictional choice, whether it's Canada, America, Ukraine, or Greece. Why have you chosen that? You know, what are your goals? Why have you actually felt that this clinic or the surrogate is necessary? And just actually make sure that the local rules mirror when you come back in the UK what you need to do. We obviously do have a small community, like Growing Families, as said. You know, we've worked in this industry for a long time now, for well over a decade. We work with a lot of providers, so we do, you know, a lot of relationship building. We ask you to go and speak to forums where you actually meet parents. Go and speak to the intended parents that have been through this and make sure it all works for you and you understand the pitfalls as well as all the benefits. Obviously, we're here to answer any questions you have. We cannot draft your surrogacy agreement in the UK. You can have a local lawyer draft that where it's permitted in that jurisdiction, but what we can do is give you guidance of what should be in there. We can actually explain to you the process so that you go armed with enough information to make informed decisions. And essentially, the most important thing is guiding you through this is that we'll apply for the UK parental order when you come back to the UK, which is essentially ensuring that you have full parental rights, that that child has a new birth certificate with you as both intended parents. We can even update your will to make sure your trusts and your wills are all in line, and if necessary, help you with your life insurance or even health insurance, depending on what jurisdiction you go to. I like to think of ourselves as very friendly, even though there's a lot of information there. We try to make it digestible and easy for you. And more importantly than anything is a fixed fee, so you know exactly where you stand from day one. We don't have anything hidden and we're very clear with you throughout. You can do this for the whole package from journey A to Z, or we can just help you in the background. That's how we pretty much work. Now, so for example, we've talked about Greece and the Ukraine. So what you need to look at is various countries. So I'm going to pluck the America out of the air because that is very much paid for surrogacy, where you can have a commercial agreement. But that is absolutely the opposite of how it works here in the UK. So for something like Greece, it works very closely because it's like altruistic, like the UK wishes it to be. So it actually fits in with UK legislation. So therefore, that's of a real benefit. Now, actually in Greece, as I'm told, there's no biological link that's required for intended parents, whereas in the UK, that's an absolute must. So then we would have to look away from a parental order and a traditional surrogacy arrangement in a legal form, look at an adoption order. So you do have to look at the synergies between your jurisdiction and the UK law. Now, don't forget that the English law will have to take precedence if you're bringing your child over here and you are going to apply for a parental order. So you do just need to make sure that you sit down with us and your local lawyer and that we have these conversations. So for the Ukraine, you know, again, the intended parents go straight on the birth certificate, what I know is a real feature and a selling point for many, because straight away you feel that comfort that you have the birth certificate, that you're nominated as in parents immediately. However, it won't work for the LGBT community. We've also had difficulties in the past where a separation has taken place during surrogacy, as you do have to be a married couple. You also do have to have very strict criteria, such as a medical letter that you have been unable to conceive, and you've had to have 4 rounds of IVF. So whilst the hurdles may be slightly harder to jump through, again, there is some synergy. So you do need to make sure you've got your research in place and that everything that they're doing with you mirrors what the UK will need when you come back. I've touched on very much Greece and Ukraine because obviously that's the topic tonight, but you've heard so much from the experts. I don't intend to go into that great detail. What's more important is to understand when you come back to the UK. So you will need to make an application, and unfortunately you can't do that until after the child's born, but you do have a 6-month finite deadline. And the surrogate, and if she's married or in a civil partnership, must also sign this form 6 weeks after the birth. Now, this is where the concern comes in that she could change her mind, and I'm not going to lie to you that we haven't had issues like that arise. So a lot of people can go to a UK, an outside UK jurisdiction where there's a legally binding contract. However, it is rare. There are a lot of clinics and surrogate forums that, you know, do scrutinise who you're interacting with and do take so much precaution. They do their due diligence. So whilst it is there are ways to mitigate that, but just to be aware of this time frame. Then the court will appoint a parental order reporter, CAFCAS, who will actually interview the intended parents and the surrogate if it's here in the UK, just to make sure that everything's correct. If the surrogate and the spouse, for example, overseas has signed the form, there's no concerns and the baby's back in the UK, they'll interview the intended parents to make sure everything's acceptable in the house, the arrangements are acceptable. Often there's 2 hearings, but we try very much to get the parental order in the first hearing. Now, this is where it comes down to the importance of understanding the synergy of jurisdictions. So if you haven't spent more than reasonable expenses, that you've followed the rules of the UK law in your overseas jurisdiction, we're hoping that no challenges will be raised. If there is something, however, that doesn't mirror the UK, such as you spent more than reasonable expenses, perhaps there's been a separation during the process, we will have to potentially do a more complicated second hearing. It can be straightforward still, and the courts are very much about the best interest of the child and trying to give you what you need. They're not there to trip you. Again, by talking early, taking research and preventative steps, there should be a smooth transaction. You then get your parental order, which essentially gives you the birth certificate for both intended parents, and then it goes to the registrar. Now, with COVID, yes, some court hearings have been delayed and the process has been slow, but actually with an international element, the High Court is dealing with this, and they are dealing with this virtually and in person on occasion. And so it has been quite efficient still. So COVID now seems to be less of a barrier than it was, and the courts and the backlog is clearing. So going back to complex cases, perhaps where you have used a jurisdiction that is different to the UK, whether it's not altruistic, whether there's no biological link. If we cannot apply for a parental order, we'd have to look at alternative means such as an adoption order. But if we can carry on with the parental order, the witness statement is a vital key component. You need to have a genetic connection to the child, which again is a reason why we'd have to look at other jurisdictions that don't necessarily require this, that the intended parents are over 18. They have to have an established domicile here in the UK. Consent has to be provided by both the surrogate and, if she's married or in a civil partnership, their partner, and that's 6 weeks after birth. So that's what you would normally incorporate into an overseas contract. But if that's of a difficulty, if that hasn't been obtained, if there's problems, again, that's dealt with at court through witness statements and various applications. And if you have spent more than what's considered reasonable in terms of expenses in the UK, we can put that and address that in the witness statement. So reasonable expenses, again, what we should be doing is documenting these, keeping our receipts, keeping harmony with the UK law. As I've said, there are jurisdictions where you can pay commercially for surrogacy, and that's when challenges can arise in the UK courts. So again, just justify why you've done this, document it and address it in a witness statement, and hopefully that complexity will be reduced. So the A to Z, I mean, speak to your clinics, speak to a foreign lawyer so you understand the local rules, and have them work with someone like ourselves in the UK so there is harmony over the agreements, the form signing, and everything that UK will need when you come back into the UK. Make sure that we understand this, the process throughout, the terms, the documents, ask all the questions you need, do all the research and be informed. Speak to intended parents, go on forums. These sort of seminars we're doing tonight are fantastic, not only to hear from people like ourselves doing this, but also to reach out to other people that have been through the process. I would say obtain advice early. As soon as you know you're going to embark on the journey, do it immediately so you are informed. So when you do choose your jurisdiction or your clinic, you know what questions to ask. You've got someone in your corner to really support you. Make sure that you've got the appropriate health insurance, whether you're in Canada where it's included, whether it's in America, you pay a fortune, whether it's in Europe now with the way that things are changing with Brexit. Make sure you understand when private healthcare, travel insurances and health and life insurance need to come into play. Change your will and make sure that everything's been taken into account for both the surrogate and for your child. There will be expenses, so make sure you have a clear budget. Potentially something might happen, and again, a lot of clinics will give you guidance on when and if that needs to come into play, and the agencies are very good at managing that. They'll keep spreadsheets, they'll help you with your budget, but always have a contingency plan. Depending on what country you're going to, as I said, the UK will need to harmonise for a parental order, but we might have to look at your visas, maybe citizenship and immigration rules. So again, that's a very specialist area depending on your nationality, where you're domiciled, where you're going for the surrogacy arrangement. It may be that we need to apply for new passports, new birth certificates. If you get the birth certificate immediately in your jurisdiction, you might be able to bring the child straight home. We might have to apply before you fly. So again, that's a consideration you do need to understand before you embark. Now, obviously, as a lawyer, we are here to help you, guide you and reach your goals, but invariably, sometimes things do go wrong. You know, hopefully this will not apply for anyone, but just so you know, even in the worst case scenarios and the cases we've dealt with, we've so far, touch wood, managed to come on top. We've had a couple split up during the process, but because their intention was to obtain a parental order, we changed the definition of home in a reported case. And unfortunately, just like in many occasions where a child's passed between two homes, that was successfully defined as a home for surrogacy purposes, and a parental order was still awarded. We've had reasonable expenses where the court have challenged this, where they haven't been reasonable. They've gone too much into the commercial realm. Very good detailed explanation and spreadsheet did help us overcome that. We've actually had somebody stuck in Ukraine where there was a separation and there was a medical issue. And again, working with the local lawyers, the agents, that was resolved. The child could come home, medical bills were funded. And whilst we couldn't get a parental order due to complexities, we were able to get an adoption order. And we did get around some of the loopholes and the risks involved. We even had the death of a biological parent, which meant that the non-biological parent could not become an intended parent. We've had a surrogate refuse to sign the parental form. Again, all of these, whilst they sound scary, we have resolved them. We have sorted them out. So we have a strong litigation team on hand that needs to jump in if necessary. We've got employment advisors to help with your paternity and your maternity. We can help draft your wills and your trusts. And we can help you understand the immigration and insurance. So again, do not be frightened that with a good ecosystem, even if something goes wrong, we're always there to assist you. But how do you avoid the pitfalls? Well, ultimately, the child's interest comes into play for everybody and everybody that's involved in this process, particularly the UK courts. So the most important thing is make sure that one of your intended parents is genetically related to the child. Also understand how a separation might work should that sadly happen throughout the process. Update your wills early on, so thinking of the contingencies. You must follow the law in the country that you're having the surrogacy arrangement and make sure there's harmony here in the UK. Just make sure that you're not doing anything that's going to challenge your parental order here. Have adequate life and health insurance. It's something very, very important, specifically in certain jurisdictions. If your child has had to be kept in hospital due to a medical condition, you need to understand whether they have already passed in parental rights to you or whether it remains with a surrogate. If it's with the surrogate, is she covered under her healthcare, or do you need to have healthcare? There's a lot of issues around that at the moment, depending on jurisdiction. So again, some research, speaking to the clinics and the agents, I'm sure they'll help you with all of that. There are issues that do come up, but with more planning, with research, and with a really good ecosystem, pretty much 95% of those can be avoided straight away. But just to be warned, it doesn't matter how the jurisdiction works, only where you're having the surrogacy arrangement, you have to think of the UK. If you're returning with your baby to the UK laws will prevail when it comes to birth certificates and parental orders. And without a parental order, you cannot give medical operation consent. You will not have full parental rights. I've put my details on there, and Bianca, who's also my surrogacy lawyer, is here to answer any questions. I know that's a whistle-stop tour and there's a lot involved, especially when it comes to jurisdiction by jurisdiction. So we're happy for you to follow up with an email or have a call with us. We're here to assist you and work with the local lawyers. I hope I've answered as much as I could tonight.
That's great. Thanks so much, Karen. There's a few questions coming in for you on the Q&A for you to chat, but that's just terrific. Just to clarify for people also, Ukraine's a little bit unusual in that in Ukraine, there's not a legal process for transferring parentage, just an administrative process. So you will engage with a notary in Ukraine, but not necessarily a lawyer. It's one of the few countries where a lawyer isn't involved in that process, just so you know that. But as Karen said, using a UK lawyer is probably going to be pretty essential for that part. All right, thanks, Karen. That's terrific. We're going to hear from some of our parents now, but thanks so much for coming on. It's always a great presentation from you. So thanks for making it so digestible and easy to follow. It's great. Some of the lawyers I speak to are so like over your head, but you're quite down to earth, which I love. It's just great.
No worries. Thank you. Good night.
Right. Okay, so we're now going to turn to our parent panel. And we're really lucky to have 3 or 4 parents actually joining us now to talk about their really recent journeys with surrogacy in Ukraine and in Greece. So Andy Flower is joining us with his wife Sujata. Adam Stearns is joining us as well. And I think we've got Patrick McKeating coming in as well. So I'm just going to get them to, let's see, get them unmute themselves. And I'll start to introduce them in a second. Let me just see who we've got here. Okay. Okay, Andy's there, Adam's there. Hello, guys. Thanks for coming in to do this. This is really good of you. I'm just looking for Patrick, who might come in soon. So what we might do to start with, I think, here's Patrick, terrific, that's great. I'm just going to start, let me just have a look here. Trying to get Karen's screen off there because Karen's screen is still showing up for some reason. Not quite sure why. So let's start with Andy. So you guys, I know, engaged in surrogacy very recently. You and also Patrick have had to, I don't know, welcome babies in the midst of COVID in Ukraine. Can you tell us a bit about what led you to surrogacy in the first place? First of all, I mean, why did you acquire it as a process?
Are you asking us, you know, why we came to this process?